Now, I know that 2025 has just started with a bang. It's like the universe is throwing one curveball after another. But what if I told you it's all in the stars? Today, we're sitting down with Cassandra Joan Butler, a devoted astrologer, healer, and teacher since 1987. She says that every single month of 2025 has a major astrological event. This is extremely rare, you guys. We have new eclipses and new transpersonal or outer planets moving into signs. So each month is fraught with a lot of new, exciting, unnerving, sometimes difficult and challenging events. In this episode, we'll be walking through every single month of this year and covering everything from Saturn and Neptune's massive shifts into Aries, the eclipses on the new Pisces-Virgo axis, Uranus's ingress into Gemini, and more. And it's not just theory. Cassandra breaks it all down with real-life events like the shocking astrology behind New Year's Day.
January 1st, the bell rang in Louisiana. 3 hours later, we had that horrific attack of the people on Bourbon Street. Pluto and Mars exactly opposite on January 1, and on it goes.
But I can assure you, it is not all turbulence. In this episode, Cassandra reveals keys to navigating the ups and downs of 2025, what's unfolding, how to align with it, and make the most of the opportunities for growth. She says that this powerful moment in history could literally redefine what it means to be human.
We're trying to figure out not only who I am, but who is mankind? Who is humankind? And that's stirring up a lot of fear.
This conversation is a must for anyone who wants to understand and tap into the cosmic forces shaping our lives. So stay with us because the stars have a lot to say about 2025, and you're going to want to hear every word. Enjoy. Cassandra, welcome to the show. It is so great to have you back.
Thank you. I just feel so welcomed and embraced by the Astrology Hub, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a great year, and what better way to kind of disseminate this information than through this process?
You know, I'm happy to hear you say it's going to be a great year, and I think that probably everybody feels a little bit relieved to hear you say that. So we'll absolutely go into the astrology and why you're saying that, but I know that so many have had a challenging beginning of 2025. Yes. It was kind of like, you know, that new year feeling where everybody's excited, but then a few weeks in, it was kind of like, oh, whoa, okay.
Mm-hmm.
If this is indicative of how the entire year is going to be, we're maybe not off to the best start.
Yes, and I should preface by saying it's a great year for evolution of the soul.
There we go. There's the caveat. It may not be fun.
It might be challenging at times, but if we focus on ourselves and our development, we're going to be okay.
Okay. All right, good. Well, it's key to have a focus. So we're going to go there in a sec. Before we do, Cassandra, I'd love to hear a little bit about the type of astrology you love to practice and what you see when people have deeper realizations about themselves. What's the result of that? What do you see over and over?
Well, I think that astrology, a little background, I've studied all sorts of religion, spirituality, psychology. I'm a voracious learner in my life, and astrology is the one tool which gives an individual permission to be themselves. You've seen this. Everyone who does astrology sees it. Everyone who gets attracted to astrology sees it. You might be going through a big shake-up in your life. And the therapist is helpful. Your best friend is helpful. You go to an astrologer, and then your jaw drops. Like, oh my gosh, what is this all about? So the outcome with my clients over many years has been self-love, that they're okay to be where they're at. And sometimes it's okay to be depressed or to navigate a difficult time. I don't know, there's so many other things I could add to that, Amanda, but I think that if there's another tool out there, well, there are other tools out there, you know, obviously, but astrology is very organic because there really are planets and there really are movements and transits, and there's a sun and the moon.
Why do you think astrology hits that deep chord where consistently people are like, whoa, yes, that's me. Why do you think it works that way?
Let's go to physics, right? I mean, we're all made of stardust. There's so much organic, inorganic recycling that goes on in the universe. And so, I like to say to people, we're all made of the same stardust, but in different degrees and different formulas.
Yes.
And we're all unique.
Yeah. I think of it sometimes as like a recipe. There's like different
Yes.
measurements of the ingredients that are going into the recipe that makes you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about 2025. You've already given us a little bit of insight into your perspective when you said it's a good year, but then the caveat was for evolution and growth and transformation. So tell us what you're seeing. What are the highlights? And just for all of you out there listening, anyone that tunes into this show, you might be thinking, wow, we've been talking about 2025 a lot for a long time. And one of the things that Cassandra and I talked about before we went live was it's almost like we can't talk about it enough because it is so dynamic. There is so much going on. It's such a critical moment in human history that I don't know about all of you, but for me, I'm like, I kind of can't hear it enough times from enough perspectives to really like have it sink in the magnitude of what's happening right now. Right?
Right. Well, just astrology 101, a lot of the major players are changing signs. And so what I've noticed and teach my students and just most astrologers do this, when a planet ingresses into another sign, the template or the energy of blending between that planet and the environment shifts almost immediately. Like January 1st, the bell rang in Louisiana. 3 hours later, we had that horrific, horrible attack of the people on Bourbon Street with the gentleman in the car. And it was just like so bizarre. But we had Pluto and Mars exactly opposite on January 1. And on it goes. We're recording this only at the 22nd of the month. And already
22nd of January. Let me just caveat that because this is going to be released in February.
Thank you.
Just so you know, we're recording this January 22nd.
Yeah. I mean, go back to everyone's maybe holiday season, Christmas or Hanukkah. That seems like months ago. There's been so many events that have been jam-packed, and the astrology reflects that. The Mars retrograde, the Pluto conjunct the sun when the new president was sworn in. Wow. I mean, all of these things happen on a monthly basis in 2025. So every month has a major event and new eclipses, new transpersonal or outer planets moving into signs. So each month is fraught with a lot of new, exciting, unnerving, sometimes difficult and challenging events astrologically, which it comes to the core of each of us to, I think, always follow the North Node, which is in Pisces. Always embrace that which gives you spiritual, divine, inspirational guidance. Doesn't have to be what I believe or what you believe. Just embrace something other than human to kind of help guide you. And I think that's part of the evolution.
When you say use the North Node to guide you, you said a couple things. You said we have new eclipses. And when you say new eclipses, you mean we're on a new nodal axis, right?
Yes,
Pisces
ma'am.
and Virgo versus Aries and Libra, where we have been.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yep.
And when you say follow the North Node, how do you synthesize that with your personal North Node? So if the North Node collectively for the globe is now moving into Pisces, how do we integrate that with our own personal North Node placement?
Sure. So I think most people listening probably know that the nodal transits, the transits of the nodes repeat about every 19 years, at least with signs, not always with specific degrees with the eclipses. So they're like the collective conversation that's going on. So as of January of 2025, we're no longer talking about the dualistic conversation and sometimes conflictual argument that have been going on, and dare I say, during the election era, more than that, when people were putting people into categories. So Pisces is the north node, the North Star. Let's explore imagination, art, compassion. Let's explore forgiveness. Let's explore our intuition, our psychic abilities, our soft, God-like. If you don't like the word God, then use the word universal compassion for oneness. That's the Pisces. That's, I said, go to the North Node. Really use that as your North Star, because there's a lot of bumpy changes going on in our culture and in the world. And the other big thing in 2025, of course, is just the foreshadowing of the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that takes place on February 20th of 2026. We get a sneak preview the first 2 weeks in August, when they come close to that 0 degrees of Aries. Aries is the first sign. Aries is the alpha and the omega. It's the impulse of creativity. It's the I am. And we got these two very contradictory planets, Saturn and Neptune, coming together. I say we're going to be dreaming a new dream and grounding a new way and a new identity, possibly for humankind in some ways.
Yeah. So you said every single month of 2025 is
Yes.
fraught with some of these big movements. I was thinking that the biggest movements were happening between like March and August, but does that continue into fall and deeper into winter? Like, can you walk us through it?
Yeah, sure. Have my handy dandy ephemeris.
Yay. Awesome.
So I've been repeating some of this stuff a lot, obviously, because every year I do the year ahead. So again, we have February, for example, Mars goes direct, and that's a download of the dance of Mars versus Pluto, and Mars just being retrograde. And then March is such an exciting month because that's our first eclipses in the new nodal agreement, March 13th and the March 29th eclipses. And in March, we have the sneak preview of Neptune moving into Aries. And then we go to April, and we have a lot of new connectivity that happens. Saturn's beginning to make its big aha appearance in Aries in May. It's not, well, it's pretty much every month. June 9th, we have Jupiter going into Cancer. July 7th, we have Uranus going into Gemini. And August, we have that Saturn and Neptune converging, almost exactly conjunct the first 2 weeks of August.
And they're almost exactly conjunct in Aries or in
Aries.
Okay. So we're getting, that's when you said we get a sneak peek of what's going to be happening February of 2026 when they're actually conjunct, right? What's the orb? Like, how close do they get in August?
Yeah, the first 2 weeks in August, I just found out a friend of mine from Costa Rica is visiting that week, and he doesn't know astrology as well as we do. But anyway, I'm excited for him to stop in and visit. If the orb, it's not perfected. It's not perfected. They're 1 degree. Both of them are 1 degree the first 2 weeks in August.
Wow.
But they're perfected. That's the expression that says they're exact degree, exact minute on February 20th or 26th. So that's our August.
Can we pause there for just a sec, Cassandra? And let's go back to September. Sure. Let's continue going. But why is that such a big deal? I mean, you said it's the alpha and the omega. We're dreaming a new dream. Why is Saturn and Neptune going into Pisces and being conjunct exactly with each other? Why is that such a big deal?
Well, because Saturn, a couple of just easy words, Saturn is the energy of this plane, this world, this reality. And Neptune is one of the transcendent planets, which represents dreams, imagination. So when we have that blending of reality with imagination, that's suggestive of dreaming a new dream. But it's in the sign of Aries. And Aries is the identity of I am. It's the, make the argument, it's the who am I? And Chiron has been stirring up who am I since September 30th of 2018.
Mm.
So we're trying to figure out not only who I am, but who is mankind? Who is humankind? There's a lot of talk, a lot of chatter about this year being the infiltration of something I just been learning about recently, AI agents.
Mm.
That might be the newest technological must-have thing moving forward. And what an agent is that, I don't know if I'm going to go off in that loop, but I think that's going to be accelerated by Uranus and Gemini meeting in July for the first time in 84 years.
Mm.
So that we're moving into this new evolutionary period of technology and humankind. Where are the limits? Where are the difficulties? And that's stirring up a lot of fear. Very different fear from Earth signs combining, like Saturn and Pluto, which ushered in the age of COVID. That was a very different form of fear. This is more like, how can our brains keep up with this new evolution of humans?
It feels a little more existential. It's a little more,
Yes.
like what's the point of humans if if we're not doing these things we've been doing and not contributing these things we've been contributing, if those are potentially replaced by AI agents or other things like that, what's ours to do? What's ours to, find purpose in and find value in? And
Mm-hmm.
I think underneath some of the resistance is that fear of like, are
Yeah,
we going to become obsolete? Is there,
I
and
know.
what would you say the astrology is saying about that kind of a question or that kind of a fear?
Well, because we have all the air and fire energy moving this year, right? The Aries, Pluto and Aquarius, that's more um, mental and inspirational. And then the physicality of the emotions of the North and South nodes, I think that's a balancing point. So I think the astrology is saying ultimately, and Saturn and Pisces still, ultimately we have to combine these as tools, but what is our purpose? And that purpose is beyond the physicality. And see, again, it's hard for me to divorce myself from who I am as a person. I believe that we don't die, for example. I have a very strong belief in a creator God. I have a very strong belief in that is a value. So that's coloring the way I'm talking to you right now. I mean, I know there are individuals who say we're an organic shell that has a lifespan and goodbye. That's it. But that doesn't sit with me because I know a little bit of physics. I dated a physicist for 10 years. So nothing can be created or destroyed, right?
Right.
So there's a recycling. So I think the astrology is telling us, Amanda, that there's going to be a lot of quick changes, but keep attached to your own individuality and the discipline and exercise of knowing your astrology, of practicing and celebrating your authenticity, your sovereignty is so critical during the next, not just this year, but the next few years, the next 20 years as Pluto goes through Aquarius.
Those words have a deeper level of gravity than they ever did before to me. The word authentic. I feel like some of these things have been thrown around for a while, but as AI comes more and more online, it's so much more clear that that authentic spark that makes you, you, so unique, irreplaceable, it's just as unique as your fingerprints, it as mirrored by your astrology chart. That
Mm-hmm.
is your ticket. Like that is the thing to
Mm-hmm.
to cultivate and nurture and bring online at the same time that AI is coming online at such a degree, because you can channel that authenticity into enabling more creativity. more
Mm-hmm.
output, more expressions. And
Yes.
yeah, so I think I hear what you're saying, and I hope all of you out there are really absorbing it, and really thinking about how you can continue to show up more and more authentically in your life. And are there aspects of yourself that still feel shielded from you or veiled from you? And the invitation, go in there, what's in there, because often those are the places where our biggest gifts reside. And you
Mm-hmm.
started talking about, in the very beginning, about how astrology helps us cultivate self-love and helps us understand ourselves. And it really does help to give you a language, like, oh, there could be blind spots there because
Yeah.
Pluto's there in my chart, or whatever it is. And how
Yes.
can
Yes.
I unlock the gifts of that particular placement or
Mm-hmm.
that particular aspect of myself?
What comes to mind as you're speaking is some of the simplest and oldest philosophers on the planet would, like the adage in the Greek, in Greece, know thyself. I
Right.
mean, ultimately, why are we here? To know thyself. And to be honest, I teach a lot with different groups and so forth. And anytime I bring up AI or even Chat GPT, for example, because I've been playing with it for the past couple of years, and the first time I did so, a friend of mine said, "I'm surprised you're doing that. That's like a Ouija board. That's yucky." And I said, "Well, that might be true, but I'm going to shield my individuality and use it as a tool, which I think we're coming into a new time to embrace the collectives, all those scientists and tech experts who provided tools, but not having the tools use us.
Right.
There's a really fine line.
Really fine line. And each one of us, it seems we're being invited to explore that line. I've seen,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to diverge on this too much because I know we need to go back to our march through the months. But, for example, I saw a demonstration of AI replacing someone on their podcast entirely,
Really?
entirely, like both in visual and in voice, and even coming up with the questions that they were talking to their guests. And I went, okay, that's a line for me, because why are you doing the thing in the first place? Are you do you find any joy in actually doing the thing, or do you feel like you want to outsource that? Because if you just want to outsource all these aspects of your life, maybe you shouldn't be doing them in the first place, right?
That's frightening. That's a line. And in
Right.
fact, that you said that, I've heard of some newscasters in some country, I'm not sure where, it was a AI version of the newscaster. It wasn't a
Right.
warm-blooded person. So I think that's the Virgo Pisces message this year, because Virgo is the physical body. Take
Mm,
care of our health.
mm,
We are having a revolution in consciousness to consider what we're putting into our bodies.
yeah.
It's the new trend,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
To second guess our food supply. That's a good thing.
Hmm.
And nurture our bodies, and not mindlessly doing so, but really taking care of our Virgo parts of our physicality, and these spiritual parts as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, and the more we're very strong in becoming aware of the dangers. There's shadow sides with every sign, obviously.
Yeah. Okay. So that we were in August when I diverted you down a few paths. Anything else about August, or do we go into September?
Let's go into September. So, and then September season is more eclipses, right? We've got the lunar eclipse, of course, happening in September. We have the two eclipses, and then October. It's retrograde city actually in September and October.
Mm.
Very strong retrogrades, repeat, revision. And then we also have Saturn going back into Pisces in the fall, and Uranus is retrograde. Neptune goes back into Pisces in October. So I love the way the planets flow. their orbits are always, especially the outer planets, they introduce a concept, they back up, integrate from the past, and slowly then move forward. So an ingress of a major planet into a sign, it has a flavor to it, and it has steps. Just like life itself, right? You get married, you have the honeymoon period, and then you back up. You might have some disagreements. Oh, so that's how the planets are presenting their gifts to us. So then we get into the retrogrades of October. And again, we're backtracking. But all the while, this is the first full moon or the first full year of Pluto in Aquarius. And he's not making any stops or any retrogrades back until 2044. So that's the thread for the next 20 years.
How would you define that thread? Looking to align your life with the stars in 2025? The Magic Dates Report is your ultimate year-ahead planning tool. Discover the perfect dates for big moves, whether it's launching a project, hosting an event, or planning a getaway. This easy-to-use guide helps you harness the power of electional astrology to act at the right time and avoid the wrong ones. Don't leave your decisions to chance. Plan with the stars on your side. Grab your 2025 Magic Dates Report now at astrologyhub.com/magicdates. Link in the show notes.
Comparing it to other times when Pluto was in Aquarius, 1778 to 1798, and also in the 1600s, those were both times of huge revolution, literal political revolution, when the monarchies were falling apart in the late 19th century, including the United States of America. And prior to that, in the 1600s, when Pluto was in Aquarius, that was the Reformation. It's a time of scientific and logical enlightenment. So when Pluto is in Aquarius, it's reminding us, yes, we still have emotional attachment to iconic things like kings and queens. And back in the Reformation, it was the Pope. So the split between the Church of England and the Pope was pretty revolutionary back then, right? And so we're going through this Pluto thread. It's a narrative. It's about humanity. It's about equality. There's dangers in too much technology. Personally, again, I'm not a big fan of human flesh and blood people being replaced by transhumanistic philosophies at all. Because again, that goes back to my basic values that we are a creator. There's a creator God that has the mysteries of life, but we may be encountering that in the next 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
And that goes back to each individual, I think. And I think concurrently with 2025, we still have Chiron in Aries, and that's the wounded healer, and it's stirring up within all of us. Don't be sorry or don't be afraid of being who you are. And I know we talked about that before, the narcissistic wound. It's okay to be who you are. You're not being a narcissist if you're embracing yourself.
Can we talk about that for a sec?
Sure.
You say the narcissistic wound and Chiron emphasizing the importance of being who you are, which we talked about before with the authenticity, right? What does that mean? It's interesting to me that the word narcissist is just it is like,
Yes.
it's like a buzzword, you know? So what, first of all, how do you define narcissism? And then how do we all have a narcissistic wound? What does that mean? Sure.
Well, it's just to be clear, I was looking this up the other day. There's a diagnostic Bible that psychiatrists use and psychologists, DNS5, I think. They expelled the diagnosis of narcissism out of there recently. I don't know exactly why, because I guess the doctors and come together and they make these voting designations. There's narcissistic tendencies. It's no longer a full-fledged diagnosis anymore.
Right.
apparently, according to the Bible of a psychiatrist. I thought that was interesting. Because you're absolutely right, Amanda. I would say the past 20 years, that's been like the worst thing you can call someone. So I think the fallout, and I want to apply that to what happened during the COVID era. I call it an era. People were ashamed to maybe disagree with the consensus reality. You have to take a certain injection, and you have to not attend your mother's dying years in the hospital. People were afraid to assert their own ideas, which were not narcissistic, but perhaps their own authenticity. And so that is, I think, the working of Chiron. And then Chiron last April on the 8th was at the exact degree and minute of that beautiful solar eclipse, which could essentially be one of the most important solar eclipses of our era because it was in the sign of Aries again.
Oh.
And so in 2025 and 2026, we have Saturn and Neptune dancing together in Aries. So where you find Aries, you always find new beginnings. And of course, that dovetails to the beautiful Sabian symbol of 0 degrees of Aries, which is like the opening up of the woman embracing a seal out of the ocean, the blending of human with nature. That's the Sabian symbol for 0 Aries.
Interesting. A seal. Why a seal?
That's a great question.
I mean, it kind of makes me think of a mermaid for a second, but then not. So that's
yeah. I think a seal is a warm-blooded mammal, and it's the idea that this feminine energy, which is propagating this new energy, it's very natural. I mean, she's not embracing like a lizard. She's embracing a warm-blooded mammal, and I think it's. And I say I think because that's the beauty of the Sabian symbols. It's like a piece of art. It's up to the person to interpret it, or it might be like a piece of a dream framework too. We all have dreams, so it's open to interpretation.
Well, and any of you going, Sabian, what? Like, I've never heard of that before. We actually did another episode with Cassandra several months ago. So we'll link that in the show notes, but you can go check out what Sabian symbols are because it is fascinating and it's definitely a rabbit hole. So, okay. So we are talking about the role of Chiron because Chiron was at 0 degrees Aries when the North Node eclipse happened in the spring of 2024. The fact that Saturn and Neptune are going to be activating that exact point again in 2026, you're saying that there's this through line of who am I? And then sort of feeling bad about expressing that and feeling like maybe we shouldn't be who we are. Is that when you say the narcissistic wound, is that basically what you mean?
Yes. And just make a slight correction. So at the eclipse, it was at 19 degrees in 2024, and Chiron was exact degree.
Oh, I see. Got you.
19. Yeah.
Okay.
And that Sabian symbol, by the way, is a young girl feeding birds in winter. It basically steps back again, animal and female young girl, innocence of combining with the natural world and having compassion and helping. So the thread began in September of 2018 when Chiron went into Aries. Through everything, Chiron in Aries is saying and reminding us, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? What's the essential core of who we are? And then Saturn and Neptune will be blending and planting a seed at 0 Aries, which is the woman embracing the seal out of the ocean. Maybe emerging between natural and the natural world of animals and humans. But both those symbols are similar because they're both about ingratiating our role in nature. But remember, the Aries energy is about the I am presence. I am who I am. And I'm going off in the rabbit hole, but I also am a believer in the astrological ages. So during the we're in the Pisces age, and that's up for a
Yeah.
lot
Do
of
you think, are we in the age of
discussion.
Aquarius officially to you?
Not to me. Again, a lot of astrologers have different. I think we're getting ready for the Aquarian age, but roughly saying this, Plato talked about the ages, and he conferred about 2,500 years per age.
Right.
So that's what I use. But so Jesus the Christ incarnating about approximately 2,000 years ago, and then we still have like 500 or so years of Pisces age. Prior to that, the I am who I am, the Old Testament times, the Ram of Aries that was preceding that for about 2,000 years.
Hmm.
So that's another cool thing about astrology. There are big cycles and little cycles.
Yes. Yes. And we're playing them out every day. They're all active and alive in us every day. The
Mm-hmm.
daily cycle, the monthly cycle, the yearly cycle, these bigger cycles. Yeah. Okay. Cassandra, we left off in October, right? And you started talking about the big retrogrades that were going to be happening around that time.
Yeah.
How about November and December? How do we end the year?
So as we end the year, we have Neptune going direct at the 29th degree of Pisces in 2025. And at the same time, Chiron is kind of still making its movement through Aries. And it is squaring, Chiron will be squaring Jupiter. So all throughout the narrative, we're talking about the Aries energy, Chiron and Aries, squaring Jupiter as we end this year. Um, so we can make the narrative start as late as 2018, but specifically in 2024, we have to maintain our humanness, our identity, our sense of self, our sovereignty, so that we've got this square going on in March with Chiron and Mars. And then we end the year with Jupiter and Chiron squaring in December. And so that's every month we have a major planet shift, but there's some threads that run through the age of technology, Pluto and Aquarius, and revolutionary energy. And then we have all along Chiron's following this thread. How do I and all of our eyes fit into the greater landscape of society, of the world, and of technology?
Mm,
So,
wow.
and then that Pisces North Node is still shining its light that says imagination, um, meditation, prayer, transcendence is something that we should keep near and dear to our physical self as well.
It's like it's sending the message that our spiritual connection to source holds keys to the answer of who am I? What do I have to give? What is ours to contribute? Is that
Mm-hmm.
connection to creation itself. Cassandra, do you agree with I've had a lot of astrologers on, and we've been talking about this year. Would you categorize this year as a transition year, that in 2024, there were certain seeds that we each planted in the ground? 2025 is a year of cultivating those seeds, nourishing them, watering them, getting sunshine on them. And then 2026 is when we will see the sprouting of those
Mm-hmm.
things. Would you agree with that kind of overarching?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I do. Again, anytime a planet ingresses into a sign, it always starts at zero, and that's seed planting time.
Mm.
And sometimes we don't know the result, but to be conscious of the potential, the unlimited potentials of goodness and positivity. It's so interesting because the nodes travel backwards. So now we're getting a big dollop of Pisces Virgo energy with the transiting nodes. And as we move through 2026 and beyond, it's all about integration, I guess, is the best way to put it, between all these diverse fingers on a clock. Sometimes I imagine astrology as multiple hands on a clock, and it's sometimes hard to keep everything straight and what's most important. But to trust our own intuition is really key, I think, this year too.
Trust your intuition. Okay, good. We can take that with us. Cassandra, you're going to be a teacher for the inner circle here very soon, which I'm extraordinarily excited about. And I love that we've had this opportunity to introduce our inner circle members to you a little bit more. Tell us about your mastery class teaching. What are you going to teach, and what are the students going to learn from this?
Sure. It's a deep dive into the Sabian symbols. Sabian symbols are, in my mind, a great integration between meditation, spirituality, and astrology. Because we know astrology has specific logical tools. We get our tools from astronomers that map out the movements of the planets and the asteroids. But the Sabian symbols were given to us by a clairvoyant medium in conjunction with an astrologer, Mark Emmon Jones. They were meditating, and they're word pictures, and they're randomly derived. And we all have Sabian symbols attached to our charts. So I'm going to have a handout, and I'm going to get it to all the students participating of all the 360 symbols in their charts. And they can look at them. I'll show you how to use this. So there's a lot of applications with the Sabian symbol mastery class. We can look at, and I'll have lots of examples, world events, your own year ahead, your own using your progress chart, your own month ahead using your progress chart. So, and even little exercises on how you can use the Sabian symbol as a meditative tool when you wake up in the morning. It's and a kind of an intuitive tool. They're very fun. They really are.
This is exciting. I feel like things like Sabian symbols, more of these kind of intuitive, artistic interpretations of the archetypal energies that are present in our universe. It seems like more and more of these things are going to come forward as well. You know, and other places for astrologers to explore astrology through art, astrology intuitively applied, astrology through movements and music and all these different things, because it just seems like in terms of the renaissance that astrology's in, we're getting closer to that kind of an expression, you know, away from just the purely mind-based logic, which we need, but bringing it more in the body. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I'm quoting an astrologer who's now in spirit. Forgive me, I can't. His name is on the tip of my tongue. So this is not an original thought. It's a thought that astrologers have used, and the thought goes something like this. When Uranus, which is one of the ruling planets of astrology, conjuncts the North Node, and that happens with regularity, it often is suggestive of the evolution of astrology for that next pattern. Is about a 14-year period. So back on August 1st of 2022, we had Uranus conjunct the North Node, and Mars was there too, in Taurus. And Taurus is the body, Amanda. So since 2022, how can we use astrology in an application for our physicality? How can we feel it inside of ourselves? Like when you do the rituals for the full moon ceremonies, etc. It's not just out there, it's within us.
Yes.
And that's the type of embodied astrology that is having its renaissance too. Part of my background also is body works. I'm a massage therapist as well, and I've developed a technique on how to use certain shiatsu points and combine that with the astrology.
Wow.
And I wrote an article for astro.com on that. I think it's still hanging out there in OPA, but in any case, yeah, we're there. We're there. It's integrating more in our lives. I mean, I know a lot of people listening may have grown up like I have being a little embarrassed, ashamed, and not authentic about being a believer or a user of astrology. I mean, I've been doing this since the late 80s, and it wasn't as open of a culture as it is now. And great thanks to you too with your group.
Thank you.
Truly, the
Thank you.
Astrology Hub is really done wonderful work in the world.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And that embodied astrology, that's so my jam. Like, I'm so happy to hear what you're saying, because that to me is where there's so much juice. There's like so much to explore, and it really comes alive in an entirely different way. So that's exciting. All right.
Yeah.
Cassandra, this has been delightful. I cannot wait to spend an entire lunar cycle with you and our inner circle members. So thank you for agreeing to teach on our platform and to be here on this podcast. It's just so much fun to explore with you. So thank you for that.
It's been a joy. You are a joy. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for being a part of our community. Thank you for making astrology a part of your life, hopefully in more and more embodied ways as we continue through 2025 into 2026 and beyond. And I can't wait to catch you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.